right, good evening. I'm Danielle Smith, president of the Alberta Enterprise Group. And I want to welcome you to our Alberta Enterprise Group Calgary Mayoral Forum. I want to also acknowledge my colleague at the back, John Liston. You can give a little bit of a wave in case you want to meet him. He's our he is our Edmonton contingent. And Laura Pentlebury, I think, is out in the hallway making sure that all of our technology is working well because we are live streaming this. As you know, we've had a few revisions because of COVID. We kind of passed the point of no return on being able to move strictly to online, but we wanted to make sure that we could accommodate both. We looked up the health orders, and because people are trying to figure out what the health orders mean, what I will say is we are serving food and drink. So when you are seated, we are treating this as a restaurant under the health orders, and so you are able to take your masks off when you're seated. The staff has asked if you are up and walking around, if you can put your masks on. And also under the health order, if you're doing an entertainment presentation, you can also take your masks off. And this is going to be very entertaining. So we are going to ask our candidates to take the masks off if you feel comfortable doing so. If you do not feel comfortable doing so, that is totally your choice. But that is our read on the health orders. All right, so the way we're going to approach this evening is similar to how we did last night. I have an opening statement that I'm going to ask each candidate to make, and I've already told them in advance the order that I'd like them to go in. We'll do reverse order for a closing statement. I'll ask them a question in the middle, and each candidate will get an opportunity to lead on that. Everyone will answer. We're not trying to make this a big fight and a big combative debate. We want everybody to have an opportunity to make their best case. And then at the end, we will end the live stream, and each of the candidates will spend 5 minutes at a table. So we'll ask you to consolidate around 5 tables. Each candidate will get 5 minutes at a table, and then we'll do a switch so that you get a chance to ask them any questions that I may have missed. So we will begin with candidate Jody Gondek, and the question for our candidate is, why do you want to be mayor of Calgary?
Are we okay? We're on. Thank you very much, Danielle. We're facing economic uncertainty in our young city in a way that we have never seen before. And if we desire a future that involves attracting investment, welcoming talent and retaining it, and we really want to be strong in terms of our economic advantage, we're going to need to be pretty intentional in our plans. I've been able to partner with a cross-sectoral group of stakeholders who created a downtown strategy that we approved as a council that demonstrates to investors that we believe in a strong future for our city. I've also championed investments in public transit, in complete communities, and in protective services to create safe, affordable, and walkable communities in our city. I've disrupted a broken taxation system to remedy a flawed formula that was compromising our competitiveness in attracting business to our city. It took my experience and persistent leadership to foster that change and to push for a more nimble and responsive administration and create an environment where small business, which is the very engine of our economy, to be successful. The next 4 years at City Hall will require a steady hand and a team that can prioritize our collective well-being as Calgarians. We need a mayor who can stabilize the economy, prioritize our citizens, and create a sense of certainty and predictability for our investors. I have the experience, the character, and the will to be that leader, one who launches us into prosperity and opportunity. I will work with all sectors to ensure that we're listening to the voices of our community leaders, our business owners, our service providers, and diverse Calgarians, not just so that they're heard, but we can create a foundation that involves them. I will offer you strength and support in achieving our many common goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gondek. Our next candidate is Bradfield. Try again.
Yeah. Thanks, Jody. We're good? Okay, great. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me, Danielle. I appreciate it. I've been a proud Calgarian for nearly 5 decades. I was lucky enough to marry my high school sweetheart and raise 3 wonderful children here in the city of Calgary. I've built businesses in different countries around the world in different industry sectors. And I'm just so proud to be that Calgarian that can bring some leadership back to the city of Calgary. We have an opportunity right now in the city of Calgary to build something special, something that we can all be proud of. I want to bring back collaborative leadership. I want to bring back a culture of positivity where none exists right now. We have an opportunity to create a very diverse, strong economic platform where jobs and businesses can flourish once again here in the city of Calgary. So thank you again for having me. I look forward to the conversation and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Field. Grace Yan, why do you want to be mayor of Calgary?
Hello, distinguished guests, friends, family, fellow candidates, and thanks, Danielle. I'm Grace Yan. I'm standing for Mayor of Calgary today. Calgary faces many challenges. Every city in this country is facing challenges due to this pandemic and due to previous leadership. Expecting incumbents to be diligent this time is futile. My vision for Calgary is more or less like everyone here today. We all want to be a vibrant and thriving city. The differences are going to be in the resolution and solutions in how we approach them. This pandemic has created much divisiveness. I'm about building consensus. The goal is keeping Calgary safe while keeping our people employed and businesses alive. I want to bring back investment to Calgary. What is stifling us is the bureaucratic nature of City Hall. We need to be open to innovations such as electric, wind, solar, bio, hydrogen as a companion to our past oil and gas successes. Our experience in oil and gas should be used as a leverage to attract these new 21st century industries. As mayor, I cannot dictate policy on education, but I can advocate for better diversified education for Calgarians so they can benefit in the future. Innovation comes from education. I want to create an environment which is open to investment and innovation, so our economy mirrors our community to be diverse and achieve consensus. Calgary deserves leadership that reflects the strength of the community. We are facing unprecedented challenges, and I know that I am the leader Calgary needs to recover, rebuild, and lead to a prosperous future for all. I will be by your side, supporting big and small businesses, youth, arts, education, innovation, sports, nonprofits, and economic development. Calgary, I am your relentless advocate today and always. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Yan. Zane Novak, why do you want to be mayor of Calgary?
Well, first of all, thank you and the Alberta Enterprise Group and you, Danielle Smith, for inviting me to this forum. I think it's so important that we engage in this as Calgarians. My background is small and large business, and that's brought me a lot of experience on how to make difficult decisions, make prosperous decisions, and lead people forward. But being part of the Calgary community for about 20 years has led me into the nonprofit world extensively. I probably put about 23,000 volunteer hours into our nonprofit sector in positions, everything from boots on the ground, serving meals, to board positions. My last board position was with the Kirby Center, and that brought me into contact with City Hall because we need to relocate it. And I learned to see, I came to see the inefficiencies, the disengagement of City Hall, City Council, and City Administration. And we as Calgarians are paying that price. And it's evident when we look around us. We look at our vacancy rates downtown. We look at the fact that we're losing population growth in the 20 to 24 age range, which is just critical. I probably don't even need a microphone. We have to change now. I used to always, when I came here, I'd ask people, what's your Calgary story? Because not a lot of people could say that they were born and raised. We were like that beacon where everybody came to Calgary because there was opportunity here. Well, it's not that way anymore. And we have to bring that back. We are already slipping down a slope that will be difficult to recover from. And if we do not make dynamic changes now, have strong collaborative leadership within our City Hall, our City Council, we risk becoming a vacant downtown city and a vacant city that is a shadow of what it used to be. And that might sound depressing, but actually we have a ton of hope in the future. We just need good leadership at the helm because this city has so many things going for it. We're dynamic, we're creative, we have the highest percentage of post-secondary graduates in North America. We just need to give them the opportunity to flourish.
All right, thank you, Mr. Novak. Mr. Davison, why do you want to be mayor of Calgary?
Well, thanks very much, and thanks, Daniel, and thanks everybody for hosting here today. You know, it's interesting. We've got probably the most important election in front of us that we've ever faced here in Calgary, and leadership is critical. You know, at a time when we're seeing more young people leave our city than come into our city, there's some big challenges that we face. You know, for me, I'm really fortunate. I'm born and raised in the ward I'm now represent, and I'm raising my 3 young kids in that ward with my wife, Jen. But I'm concerned for their future because recovery is not guaranteed. And we're at a critical point here in our city where we've got to get things moving forward. We don't have endless time to rethink strategies. You know, I have helped bring the economic strategy approved by council. I've helped bring the downtown strategy approved by council. I've got the Rivers District stat up. We're building the new event center. When people said no to opportunities, I found a way for us to say yes. And that's critical moving forward. We do not have time to delay. We do not have time to wait. The city is depending on us. You know, in a world where capital and talent are extremely mobile, it's important to set the tone that people want to be in Calgary because they don't need to be here anymore. And my goal is to ensure that when my kids grow up, when your kids grow up, when our young people, you know, find their careers, they'll find the careers they want here in Calgary and choose Calgary. Again, not because they have to, but because they want to. That's the Calgary I know. That's the Calgary I'm committed to.
Thank you, Mr. Davison. We're going to move now through the next stage of looking at different questions. I'll be asking Brad Field the first question. And let me just, sorry, I'm just making sure that these volumes work. I've been hearing from city staff that they're very concerned about a new administrative policy that would require vaccination by September 13th and double vaccination by November 1st. Otherwise, they face dismissal in the extreme or leave without pay. I'm wondering, do you support firing staff for not being double vaccinated? And do you think that we need a vaccine passport?
Thank you for that question. Yeah, so I have a real challenge with people losing their jobs over a personal choice. There's no question that we have to protect the vulnerable and make sure that we're taking care of the population. But when we talk about mandatory vaccination, we're talking about rights as Canadian citizens and also to be able to earn a living here in the city of Calgary. So yeah, I would have a challenge around people losing their jobs over making a personal choice. For that, though, I would see city council to stay in their lane, allow the province to make those decisions for us. I would prefer to concentrate my efforts on economic recovery and the future of Calgary, making sure it's a vibrant Calgary where Calgarians can earn a solid living and the next generation have a reason to stay here in the city of Calgary. So I would tend to leave those type of jurisdictional decisions to the province. But no, I do not support loss of jobs due to vaccination process.
All right, thank you, Brad Field. Same question to Grace Yan. Do you think city staff should be fired if they refuse to get vaccinated? And do you support a vaccine passport?
It is not a black and white issue. There are many gray areas. As mayor, I will not pick a side. I will use health guidelines and science to create a safe environment for Calgarians, and not at the expense of our businesses. I support each entity to have the choice. So if a business produces mandates, it's their choice. If not given a choice, as mayor, I can only advise and provide guidance to make the appropriate choices. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace Yan. Zane Novak, do you support mandatory vaccination for city staff? Should city staff be fired if they aren't vaccinated? And do you support a vaccine passport?
First of all, I think it's we have a fantastic health system in many ways in which we have the opportunity to have a vaccine. I think that it's up to each person's choice if they want to have the vaccine or if they want to wear a face mask. However, the city council, current city council, put forward a motion to basically fire anybody on November 1st or have the power to fire anybody on November 1st if they do not become double vaxxed. I have been contacted literally by dozens of city staffers, CPS, CF, Calgary Fire Department, who are severely concerned about this. I know individuals that have 27 years of service into the fire department that will now lose their jobs. I know of pregnant mothers that on November 1st, have given 10 years of service to Calgary and will lose their jobs. I think that that is absolutely out of the lane, as Mr. Field said, of City Hall. And in fact, what is happening, we know that there could be easily 13 new faces in City Hall out of 15, and they're basically handing us a mandate of disaster to deal with. Right now, if you are fired, your only option in the union is to file a grievance, and arbitration is booked until 2023. We are going to be facing litigation, lawyers, costs to the taxpayer. We're going to lose staff. Imagine that 27-year senior veteran fireman. Who's going to replace him when he quits? We are being handed a mandate that is going to be detrimental to us as City Council to move projects forward. It's detrimental to the mental health of the staff. It's detrimental to the tax and the cost of our taxpayers and our stakeholders. I am absolutely against mandatory double vaccinations, and I'm against mandatory passports.
Okay.
It's to the detriment of our city.
Thank you. Jeff Davison, do you support staff being fired November 1st if they're not double vaxxed? And do you support a vaccine passport?
Well, all I can tell you is what a time to be elected, first of all. And I can tell you that there's lots of opinions, and you have to wade through the opinions and the facts. And one of the facts is no city staff will lose their job because of this, first and foremost. So we will do rapid testing. People will be allowed to go to work. So let's not fearmonger what's going to happen to city staff. Second of all, we have 16,000 employees at the City of Calgary. We have 1.25 million citizens that depend on our services each and every day. That includes fire. That includes police. We need to ensure they go to work. And I want you to remember, AHS themselves have set the standard here on mandatory vaccinations and or rapid testing in order to go to work. When we talk a lot about let's not swerve out of our lane, we're not. We're actually in complete alignment with AHS on this one. And so that's how we're going to move forward. But absolutely, I think this is, number one, COVID's not going away. And you have to remember that we've got to manage our way through this. And so what's really important to remember is that not only do we keep our businesses open and our economy thriving, that we manage health and safety of all of our citizens. Because everybody has an opinion. Unfortunately, we have to work with the best data we have to make decisions, and I plan to continue to do that.
Thank you, Jeff Davison. Jody Gondek, do you think staff should be fired if they do not get double vaxxed? And do you support a vaccine passport?
I've been in close contact with our partners at the Calgary Chamber of Commerce, and overwhelmingly their membership is indicating that they would prefer that any order of government take up action on mandatory proof of vaccination. And barring the fact that the Public Health Authority, the provincial government, who actually has the responsibility for our public health and safety, has completely abdicated their responsibility, we're watching businesses in our city having to make their own decisions. And that's simply not appropriate. It's not right. The Chief Medical Officer of Health should be providing an opinion and a perspective to Cabinet, and the Premier should be taking this decision. We're not seeing that. Let's remember, every business that's making their own decision right now is doing it because the provincial government refuses to act. We are in the stage of the pandemic we are in because that government didn't act. So your municipal government had to go into our power to provide duty of care to our citizens and enact different types of policies that would take care of businesses and the people that we serve. Let's remember who got us to this position in the pandemic and demand better.
Thank you, Jody Gondek. We're going to start the next round with Grace Yan. And the question is, you have a new city manager. When you're giving direction on how to manage the budget, would you want to see a focus on cost control or finding new ways to generate revenue?
I think right now what we have to focus on is generating revenue for the city. And that means, having infrastructure that works, that makes sense for the city. We have an event center that is constantly, still increasing the budget. Who knows, it'll be at $1 billion, right? The thing looks like a library. We want an iconic and monumental arena that we can be proud of. And the Green Line, right, it's 20 kilometers at $5.5 billion. It seems a little heavy. I think Calgarians just want transparency where this money is going. We need a Green Line, sure. We need effective and efficient transportation, but it needs to be in places where the people will actually use them, and possibly start at South Health Clinic and come to downtown with a central station, Most cities have a central station, and that goes north, and also the airport. We need an airport line. I mean, just common sense, logical expenses, but Calgarians need transparency and exactly where the money's going. Thank you.
Thank you, Gracianne. Zane Novak, should the focus be on generating new revenue or cost control?
Whenever you're working with budgets or a business, you need a balance. You need to understand the money coming in and the money going out. We've often heard City Hall say that we're one of the most efficient markets for spending of taxpayers' dollars. But if you do the simple math and you break it down per capita, per citizen, per constituent in Calgary compared to other major centers, we're actually quite high. I want to introduce specific programs to make sure that we're getting the best services, world-class services at economical prices. So that will be things like Gain Share, which is actually a reward program for finding efficiencies, leading with a carrot rather than a stick to find those efficiencies. Things like biannual review of major projects. Are we on time? Are we on budget? If not, why not? How do we get back? And also manage competition to be sure that we are getting the best value for our services, whether that's from third party or from city employers. We also need to encourage new business to come here to broaden the shoulders of the tax burden so it's not just on the few remaining. We're now currently under this city management in a situation where we're losing net 15 businesses a day. That means the rest of us have to step up and pay more. We have to change that cycle. We have to change the narrative, make sure that we're regulated and structured in a way that we're truly welcoming to small and medium-sized business.
Thank you, Zane Novak. Jeff Davison, do you focus more on cost control or generating new revenues?
Well, the answer is both. You have to be a nimble city that understands how to be competitive in this new world. And so when we think about it, it's all about, for me, expand our tax base, not our tax rate. Finding those opportunities of where we can develop. The Rivers District is a perfect example. And no, Grace, it's not $1 billion. It's 589 million or something. What we're talking about is investing in an anchor facility that will allow $3 billion worth of private sector development to come into the district. That expands a tax base in an area that has never been capitalized on before. But you have to couple that with 3 words: efficiencies, efficiencies, efficiencies. And I'm happy to work with the city manager to continue to think about efficiencies each and every day. And it's important, you know, a lot of people will talk about what they're going to do when they're elected. You know, I have the privilege of talking about what I have done. And one of the things I have done is brought EY in to conclude a study on all of those efficiencies that we should find. And it's always important to remember everyone's entitled to their opinion, but they're not entitled to the facts. And the facts are that that EY report shows that our city is operated at an efficient level. However, there is room to improve, and that's what we'll continue to do.
All right, thank you, Jeff Davison. Jody Gondek, do we focus on generating new revenue or on cost control?
Well, if you're setting operating budgets and you're not looking at revenue streams, that's a problem. And historically, that's what City Hall has done. So until I ask the question of what is our projected revenue stream based on our assessed property value, that was not information we were being given as a council when we were setting operating budgets. And I can tell you that we uncovered that there was a $30 million gap last year in what we needed to spend to provide Calgarians the services they need and what we were earning in terms of revenue. You can imagine that as our property assessed values have declined in the last 7 years, we're losing revenue. And the only way we generate revenue as a city is through property taxes. That's all we have. The provincial government dictates that. They are also taking 40% of the taxes that we generate and not telling us where it's being spent. So we either need to keep more of that in our city, or we need to divest ourselves of some of the land assets we're clinging to. If you could put businesses and residents on a lot of those lands that we're hanging on to, we could in perpetuity generate more taxes, which would provide us the ability to keep your service level solid. It's a combination of things we need to look at.
Thank you, Jody Gondek. We'll have Zane Novak lead this next round. In talking to developers today, they were saying that it can take 10 to 25 years to get the development approvals and permits in place and all the infrastructure to build a new community. I hear a lot from business owners about how difficult red tape and the permitting process is. What would you do to fix that and speed things up?
Many years ago, I started a business in Mexico, and I thought it was the most bureaucratic-laden system in the world until I started to experience what it was like to relocate the Kirby Center through city administration, city council here, and I realized that we're very parallel systems. So yeah, you know, if you're going to set up a business here, set up a development here, It is a well-known fact that you can do it in most cities in Canada, especially like Edmonton, Saskatoon, Regina, Winnipeg, in a fraction of the time and for a lower cost than here. Last CMHC's report showed that $130,000 on average of every home sold is city fees. So those things become very onerous for us moving projects forward, as has often been mentioned by others here, in a nimble, quick way. We actually need to address this. If we are going to be a city that attracts investment, attracts homeowners, and attracts small business, I would like to try to flip the city on its ear. And instead of saying automatically no to every proposal that comes in, we start to say yes. And if the bureaucratic level is going to say no to opportunities, they need to submit a file and a report as to why it is no. It's always easy to say no, but sometimes the right thing is to say yes. And I think that we need a lot more yes in this city if we're going to move forward.
All right, thanks, Zane Novak. Jeff Davison, how would you streamline the permit approval process?
Yeah, I think, we recognize that in our campaign that capital is extremely mobile, and you have to give a reason for developers to want to invest in our city again, because they don't need to, right? And when you think about some of those challenges we're facing with development permits, you can go to Edmonton, in some cases get a DP in 90 days, which could take you upwards of 18 months here in Calgary. We recognize that. But change is happening, and that's why we're doing a massive restructuring at the City of Calgary. That's one thing I'm proud to have led. We've got that working on now, but we know there's a long way to go with the planning department on making them much more efficient. But it's all about balance, right? It's about continuing to have a competitive edge, but still ensure that we're putting the work and the rigor behind the projects necessary so that these communities are sustainable over the long term, right? Remember, when we think about development, there's twofolds. Families, they want backyards. They want to live in new communities. But young people also want to live downtown, and there's complexities to both files. But we can and we will move those files forward faster, and our economy depends on it.
Thanks, Jeff Davison. Jody Gondek, how would you streamline the permit approval process?
So what we've done traditionally is looked at planning as an exercise in how you lay out a community, and we've put in processes that allow growth or they don't. And we do things like create terminology called a growth management overlay and off-site levies. And really, we need to get back to the basics of the math. What does it cost for a community to pay for itself? What are the operating costs that we know it will take to sustain that community? And you translate it back to industry and say, the place that you're trying to develop needs to generate X amount of dollars to be sustainable. And then you allow them to develop and design a community that can generate those property tax dollars and those utility amounts. That's how you know that any type of growth will actually pay for itself. That's not how we're looking at the model of development at the city. The other problem we have is a municipal development plan that prioritizes growth in established areas, but there's no capital to invest in that growth. You cannot ask the private sector to come in and redevelop an area without matching capital. And we have not done a great job of that. We need to revisit how we are going to put in the waterworks, the streets, the sidewalks, and the parks that we need in redeveloping areas.
Thank you, Jody Gondek. Bradfield, how would you improve the permit approval process?
Yeah, there's no question that we have a challenge. If we look over the history over the last, say, 7 or 8 years, development has dropped off within the city of Calgary. And the permit process in itself takes longer now than it ever has, and we're doing half the development in the city of Calgary. So everyday business owners and developers take market risk. That's what we do when we're business owners and developers, is market risk. What we won't do is take regulatory risk. And Calgary is full of regulatory risk right now between building permits, licensing, property taxes. All that stuff needs to be cleaned up and create an environment, to Mr. Novak's point, of a culture of yes. All too often, where our first words out of the mouth of the city council or out of city administration and permitting is no. And we have to change that verbiage to yes. Create that narrative where it's truly an inviting place to do business in the city of Calgary, because whether you're trying to retain existing businesses in the city of Calgary or attract new business to the city of Calgary, we have to create a culture of narrative. Right now, out of city council, they like to pump their tires and talk about, we're open for business, we're open for business. Everything we do, our actions speak differently than that. The permit process is arduous, property taxes are in the way, so we truly have to back up our words with actions. Thank you.
Thank you. Grace Yan, how would you improve the permit approval process?
So it is a huge challenge right now for investors to come in and develop. You know, I've had Investors come in, the malls are for sale in this city. They're all underperforming. And this particular investor wanted to put in $3 billion to repurpose one of the malls. And so it's main floor commercial and then sort of residential. It's a built-in clientele. It works in many parts of the world. And it was $3 billion, and the city said, oh, by the time we do the studies, the permitting, you do shadow studies here. You go for studies, okay? And they said it's going to be about 5 to 6 years. And they said, wow, 5 to 6 years. Well, we're not tying up $3 billion for 5 to 6 years. When they have offers from all over the world, Singapore, Netherlands, oh, we'll do it in a month because we want you here. So it is a big barrier. And my first 100 days as mayor is definitely to address cutting the red tape, the barriers, to really welcome, development in the city. We need to attract, investors to come here and feel welcome to develop and expand. And we have to create that business-friendly environment. We have to let the world know that Calgary is wide open for business, and that is a priority. And I think that is what we really need to do to create a thriving city. Thank you.
Thank you, Gracie Ann. We'll start this next round with Jeff Davison.
Okay.
The guidebook for great communities caused a little bit of a stir, and I think there is always this tension between, do you densify and build up to take advantage of existing infrastructure, or do you build out so that the new first-time home buyer has access to affordable housing, but then you also have to put a bigger investment in infrastructure? How do you balance those two things?
Well, I think like we talked about before, I mean, first of all, there's a couple of different issues here. You have, as I said, young people want to live in inner city. They want a vibrant lifestyle. Families want a backyard. They want to live in an affordable new community. And so we have to think about how we're going to move forward with both. And it's important to remember that a lot of these new communities, they're quite a bit more densified than even the downtown or other areas of our city. And so as we move forward with a larger modeling of product types, folks are saying yes to these new communities, and the city's saying yes because with density comes services that are paid for. When you think about the guidebook's a totally separate issue to me. The guidebook is a massive piece of inefficiency that happened at the city. 8 years to create a document, millions of dollars spent, thousands of hours of staff time, all to have something, hold at committee and not get to a council vote. That's a good example of inefficiencies that are happening. And our job at the City of Calgary is to start thinking about how we enable citizens, remove policy, not create new policy that takes far too long and is far too costly to implement, but that we don't really have an implementation strategy to get it across the line anyway.
Thanks, Jeff Davison. Jody Gondek, how do you balance building up versus building out? And if you want to comment on the guidebook for great communities too.
I think one of the most important things we need to understand as a city is that we've been really successful by providing people options of where they can live in this city. We have provided different types of housing type and tenure. You can rent, you can own, you can have the co-op experience. We have multi-generational families. We've got a lot of different opportunities in this city to allow for the right quality of life and the right type of housing environment for people who move here. What we need to do, though, is make sure that we're spending our money wisely. So when we're investing capital as a city and when we're asking our private sector partners to partner with us, why are we building roads that are oversized? Why are we instead not using that space to put in more housing so it's affordable for people? Why are we not building more green spaces? Why are we not encouraging more childcare facilities that are near places where people work and live? We have to be smarter about how we mix the types of things that we have in the communities that we are not only building, but the ones that we are redeveloping. We've had a tradition in the city of separating what we do, and it requires a lot of driving or a lot of time on transit. We can be a lot better about giving people what they need in their daily routine in one stop.
Thank you, Jody Gondek. Brad Field, do you build up or do you build out?
Well, first of all, I think the guidebook to great communities is a perfect example of where council didn't do their job in properly engaging with the public. They say they did, but at the end of the day, there was a lineup outside of City Hall waiting to hear their grievances. So, having that discussion around densification opposed to growing out, we have to find the balance because not everybody wants to live in the downtown core in a high rise. Some people want backyards, but we have to understand that there is a cost attached to growing the city of Calgary around services. But again, it goes back to, it's not up to city council to decide where and how we live in the city of Calgary. It's up to them to actually figure out after we make that decision. And so there's no question we have to acknowledge that we find that balance between densification and growing out. But again, it's a perfect example of where we should engage with the public more and have a better idea of what the Calgarians want and where they want to live within the city of Calgary.
All right, thanks, Brad Field. Grace Ann, would you prefer to build up or build out?
So with the guidebook, I know that speaking with the various communities, they did not feel they were properly engaged. And that's where the frustration came in. So I feel that, sure, if you're going to build out, that's going to take expense, like Brad said, that costs services, electricity, water. So what we really have to do at the city level is really engage with Calgarians and ask them what they want to do and what they want to do with their communities. And that's what councilors are for, engaging with the community and asking them. And then we then take it to council and we decide what will help all Calgarians. So this is what we really have to do, is listen and hear what's best for Calgarians.
Thanks, Grace
Thank you.
Ann. Oh, sorry. Were you done? I didn't mean to cut you off there. My apologies. Zane Novak, have you heard feedback on the guidebook for great communities? And what's your preference on building up versus building out?
Thank you. Certainly one of the most controversial topics we've had in City Hall in many years was the Guidebook for Great Communities. Read it cover to cover. I think it's about 135 pages. And if you're developing a new community, I mean, that's a beautiful template. But to try to shoehorn it into the existing communities that are 40 to 70 years old that they targeted, it just really isn't a feasible plan, and it will have a lot of negative impact. And it's been mentioned by others. I think it was Brad mentioned that, and Grace, that it wasn't engaged with communities to find out if this really would work for them. I know my daughter lives in Bankview, and city decided that they would give a permit for a 4-unit business to go on 17th Ave, 17A Street. So there's 4 businesses in there, probably 3 employees per, plus shoppers. They gave them 3 parking stalls. So that means that everybody that lives in that area now has to walk an extra block or 2 just to get home every day, to carry their groceries home, to do all those types of things. And so we have to make sure that we're doing these things properly. I believe that a housing market, like any market, becomes self-balancing. Supply, demand. It's beautiful to live downtown, be in that vibrant center. We need to bring some vibrancy back. But at some point in time, you may find yourself living on the 36th floor of a building with 2 children and not a park really, or a football diamond or baseball diamond or football field within 10 blocks. And you want to move to the suburbs. You want to have a bit of elbow space, be close to a park, be walking distance to a school, a backyard. We are a city that I think needs to have accommodating housing. We need to regulate in a way that it's not overly financially burdensome with fees, levies, taxes. The market finds its level, but we need to make sure that we provide the services at a cost that encourages people to come here, whether they want to live downtown or in the suburbs.
Thank you, Zane Novak. This last round will be led by Jody Gondak. A lot of the problems Calgary is facing from a revenue point of view have to do with the hollowing out of downtown, which ended up pushing off the tax burden onto the outlying beltline businesses, which then ended up pushing off with the tax shift some of the burden onto residents. So this is an ongoing problem that's not quite fixed yet. So what should Calgarians and businesses expect the tax picture to look like in the future? And maybe another way you can address that is there some hope that downtown Calgary could attract back the kind of businesses that it needs to be able to restore its role in generating revenue for the city? Jody Gondak.
Thanks for the question, Danielle, and I'll answer it in 2 ways. First off, what's the root problem? And this is something that I managed to identify in 2019. We were asking businesses through their non-residential property taxes to shoulder 55% of the burden of the operating budget. Yet they were only putting out 20% of the revenue stream. That's the math that didn't work. And so what we did is worked with the Chamber of Commerce to understand what that formula should look like. And it took a long time. It took 8 long months to do the heavy work of going to various members of council and telling them why we needed to do a shift from 55 down to 48. But I was successful in that mission. And so now we have a much better business tax environment in this city as a result. We're still not as competitive as other cities. We have much more work to do. But if you don't understand the math and you can't get to the root of the problem, you can't fix it. So I think we have a more attractive business environment now than we did a couple of years ago. But we've got a lot of work to do in making sure that we are providing incentive programs to do some conversions from traditional office spaces to the kinds of businesses that would like to occupy those vacancies.
All right, thank you, Jody Gondek. Bradfield, what do you do about the hollowing out of downtown and the tax shift?
Yeah, there's no question that we've got some challenges in downtown core. I'd like to go back to an idea around priority-based budgeting, which will create a more level playing field and a clearer line of sight around property taxes in the city of Calgary. And currently, the way we operate in the city of Calgary is we operate on next year's budget based on what we spent last year and add on to wants, needs, and wishes for the following year. Priority-based budgeting is we start with a designated amount of money, set priorities with community engagement through a virtual community hub, and set priorities. And when the money runs out, we don't spend another dime. So what that entails is it creates a situation where we're not continually going back to small business and commercial property owners and residents for more tax money. So creating an environment that in downtown, we have to talk about that part of it where we're not continually going back to residents and commercial property owners for more tax money.
All right, thank you, Bradfield. Gracianne, what would you do to address the hollowing out of downtown and the tax shift?
Yes, wow. Our downtown is 40% vacant. Some buildings are 85% vacant. There is a problem. And what we need to do is gain that confidence back for businesses to come back to Calgary and to fill those buildings. A thriving downtown needs businesses to thrive. We need to attract businesses, which means we need to be open to innovation and investment. A thriving downtown only happens with mixed use, residential, and businesses. And our taxes are inequitable. They are stifling investment. We need to lower the burden without cutting services, which means better city hall management. Thank you.
Thank you, Gracianne. We've got Zane Novak. What would you do about attracting more activity in businesses downtown and the tax shift?
Well, certainly we have a vacant downtown. And I think that, you know, the city's talking about putting $1 or $1 billion investment into the downtown core to revitalize it in certain areas. My concern with that is someone's going to have to pay for that. That money has to come from somewhere, and we will often end up just putting the tax burden and levies and fees higher on the businesses we're actually trying to attract in, which is a conundrum. I think my plan is to start vibrancy at the street level, and that will do numerous things. It will occupy our streets, it will bring vibrancy, it will bring attraction to our youth that we're losing. And right now, you know, and even for years before this real crisis, because of the plus 15, which is amazing, but it took traffic off the street level. And you went down on the street, it was difficult for businesses to stay open, boutique shops to get traffic, restaurants, bars, all of that. We need to bring things at street level that will bring that back. And I have a whole plan in my website about how to do that from 17th Ave to the Riverwalk, what will bring that flow and traffic back, and it won't be at the cost of the taxpayer having to invest $1 billion downtown. So now if you're gonna come to a city, look at locating, you see that vibrancy at street level, you're going, this is a place where my employees would want to be. This is a city that has things going on for it. I want to be here. I want to be part of this.
All right. We've got Jeff Davison. You get the last word on this. What would you do to address the tax shift and the vibrancy of downtown?
Well, I think, you know, the goal here is to move from vacancy to vibrancy. That ultimately is what we're after. And so there's three things you have to do. Livability, live, work, play, let's call it, right? So thinking about, there's nothing to do downtown after 5 p.m., which is why I'm building the Cultural and Entertainment District anchored by the BMO, Arts Commons transformation, and the new event center. You have to have people, give them a reason to want to be downtown if you're going to get people downtown. Second of all is livability. You have to create an environment of security and certainty for investors so that we can build our residential profile downtown. And third, it's all about setting the right regulatory environment to bring business here. You know, I have been fortunate to be council's rep on Calgary Economic Development for the last 4 years. I also sit on the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund. I can tell you these are tools that we have that are moving the needle on technology. And it's important to remember that tech is our future here. It doesn't matter if it's the future of Energy 2.0 or agriculture or aerospace or fintech. All of those things are possible here, but what unlocks it all is talent. You need the talent possible Because when new companies come here, Danielle, I'll tell you, the first conversation they don't have with us is about taxes or lease space. It's always about talent. Because if you can't supply the talent necessary to grow a business and accelerate their opportunity, they don't even want to have the tax conversation with you.
Thank you, Jeff Davison. All right, we are going to finish with the final question, and we'll go in reverse order to how we began, which means we will begin with Jeff Davison, because I think we just finished with you. But the question I would have for you then is, if you are mayor and you serve a couple terms, what would the city of Calgary look like after Mayor Jeff Davison?
Well, I mean, I thought on all these questions we got 1 minute, and we've now proven that without a producer, you don't stick to time. So, what does the city look like in 10 years? I think, it becomes that vibrant, energetic city of opportunity. Remember when Calgary used to be the city of opportunity, the city of entrepreneurialism? Opportunity used to be synonymous with Calgary. And ultimately, when we think about where Calgary is going to go, I want to ensure that young people have opportunity here. I want them to choose Calgary because they want to be here. And I think it really boils down to creating a city that is affordable, that has opportunity, and that values community. And I think that's what we're going to see over the next decade. And to do that, we're going to accelerate investment in our city and really unlock opportunity again here, because I really do believe the best thing about Calgary is our people.
Thank you, Jeff Davison. Zane Novak, if you're mayor for a decade, what would the city of Calgary look like after Mayor Zane Novak?
I get this question so often. I actually wrote a whole vision on my website. You could just read that. It'd be nicer than my nasally voice. But what I really want for Calgary is, I think, what everybody wants, that vibrancy. Our youth to want to be here, our youth to want to come here, the opportunity and the prosperous job structure for that to happen. But I also have in my platform a thing called participatory budgeting, where we will roll that out to help to showcase not only our geographic communities, but our ethnic communities, our demographic communities. We have one big rodeo a year here, if it's not COVID, but we've got those grounds. Why don't we have more events? Why don't we showcase the fact that when you walk downtown, our population is very diverse. I did a radio show at Red FM the other day, and they were talking about a year or two ago, they were having a cultural day, and they thought in the Northeast they would reach out to their community and they put a flag up for every community that was represented in the Northeast. Well, when they got to 93 flags, they realized they didn't have the roof space. Why don't we showcase that more? Why don't we make this truly the cultural hub city of North America? So my participatory budgeting will help with that. It'll help with the vibrancy. It will help create jobs, and it will help to showcase that we are truly that pivotal entrepreneurial city that we wish that we were, and we wish we could be again. I know we can be.
Thank you, Zane Novak. We've got Grace Yan. If you are mayor, what would the city look like after a decade of Mayor Grace Yan?
As mayor, 10 years from now, I see Calgary as a full, vibrant, sustainable, a city which citizens at every level are taken care of. A city hall and Calgarians are united. Bringing innovation, we are a hub for clean energies, which means empty spaces are full of businesses thriving. A city hall which is efficient and working for Calgarians, eliminating bureaucracy. We'll have an efficient and effective transportation system based on clean energies and technologies, and will be serving all parts of the city so that people everywhere will have access to community transportation. Youth will have access to good education regardless of where they live. Calgary will have a mix of post-high school, universities, trade schools in partnership with industries for internships, an evolving system to the needs of the future. Diverse cities have diverse educational choices. Taxes will be equitable and will eliminate inequalities between big and small businesses and between business and properties. Residents and business pay fair taxes and not burdened, but alive and thriving. Calgarians will still love this city, still be safe, sustainable, thriving, diverse, and inclusive, where Calgarians are enjoying a vibrant arts and entertainment, and proud of a new arena that is iconic and monumental. The future is bright, and the right leadership is now. I am that leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace Yan. Bradfield, after a decade of your leadership, what would the city look like under Mayor Bradfield?
Yeah, it's exciting times here in the city of Calgary. We've got this massive opportunity to build something really special. Under my leadership, through priority-based budgeting, we will have created a system where we have a sustainable, stable tax environment where business owners in Calgary, residents in Calgary, can grow their families, their businesses, and prosper here in the city of Calgary. I look across the table here at Jackson McDonough. He's the future of Calgary. He's a young gentleman, has a business here in Calgary that's growing. And, I want to create that environment where our next generation wants to be here in the city of Calgary. Give them a reason, not just a job in their chosen profession, but a vibrant downtown Calgary. Because when I talk to that next generation, it is about the downtown core and living, working, schooling, doing all their education in the downtown core. So yeah, it's a great opportunity. We've come out of crisis. We're coming out of crisis, which creates a wonderful opportunity for the city of Calgary. And most of all, at the end of the day, I want Calgarians to be proud of their city council and have that trust between the citizens and council once again. So first and foremost, let's get down that path of solid leadership and build Calgary, build something special.
Thank you, Brad Field. Jody Gondek, we're looking 10 years forward. What does the city look like after 10 years of Mayor Jody Gondek?
I think it's important to look at right now before we look at 10 years out. I think it's important for us to remind ourselves that we've got a pretty incredible city. We have one of the lowest cost of living environments in Canada in a municipal region. We have a beautiful geographic setting. We have labor force participation that is the envy of many other places. And we have public transit networks, we have parks, we have affordability of housing. We have something special here. And as we look into the future, I'm reflecting on what brought me here when I was 28. And that was the opportunity economically that this city offered. And I was young at that time, one day. And I was quite impressed that this city was willing to take a chance on my skill set and to allow someone who believed in corporate social responsibility as a fundamental principle of businesses being successful to start a consulting company. And I'm really impressed to see that we've got, young people not only in this audience, but in a lot of different companies in this city that are doing amazing work that 10 years from now will say, we laid the foundation for that. I was speaking with Avatar Innovations today. And if anybody caught the news a couple of weeks ago, they have just established a center for energy transition in our city. And they did it in partnership with 6 energy companies, including Enbridge and TC Energy. And it is a physical partnership with Aspen's Ampersand building. So the Aspen Group has opened up space in their building for these young professionals to locate, to look at carbon removal acceleration. These are innovative decisions that are driven by tech as table stakes, but more importantly, it's driven by this ideology of a transition economy. And I think that's what our future holds for us. I think 10 years from now, we will understand that by claiming our place on the global stage as the center for energy transition, as the place that understood that we can be more sustainable, we can be cleaner, we can be greener, we will attract the type of talent and businesses that we need here, and we'll keep them by being inclusive and welcoming of anyone that wants to locate in our city.
Thank you, Jody Gondek. I will just now ask our candidates to mask up because we're moving to the next part of the program. And once again, as you're up and moving around, there's food at the back, there's drinks at the back. Just make sure that you wear masks while you're standing and roaming, but you can take them off when you're seated. I know that Ms. Gondek has another commitment at 7 o'clock, so we're going to try to do this quick round of speed dating. So